So this is part of my physical media collection. I've done a few videos recently showing the mediums I do have, from the vinyl records to CD to mini disc to cassette tape to VHS, DVD, Blu-ray. Of course, we got digital content. The real problem is I'm getting really fed up with the notion that physical media is dying out because there's so many ramifications to it. Effectively, we just start to lose ownership of our products. We end up having just licenses, and that license can be revoked at any moment. The providers can literally disappear, and how we get to organize our content is very much limited. So, I mean, sometimes it comes back to just some basic principles, really, that just get lost. And once you start to recognize that certain like media, certain films, certain music just gets removed, and you have no access to it anymore anywhere. That gets I find that alarming in itself. But for me, there's so many connotations. Like, I get fed up with the idea that I can't even literally can't even organize content. So, for instance, even if you just think of like streaming platforms for your movies, so you've got Netflix, you've got Amazon. Let's just use them two as examples. You can add them to like a watch later playlist. You know, that's all you can do. Literally, watch later or the my whatever the hell it is. You know, so it ends up this massive convoluted list that isn't even you can't even organize it. You can't organize it based on action movies, romance, comedy, animation, whatever you want it to be. It's literally just everything's organized into one big block, and it's crap. And I know why they do it. It's quite apparent to me. If you was to organize the content into specific niches, you would then recognize more transparently. It'd be far more obvious to you when something gets removed from the platform. It's less obvious to you when it's like a massive list, so you probably won't notice when they take them away. But if your list was literally regimented into these little blocks, I think you'd notice it far more, um, obviously. So they don't always have a huge. They have a limited library, and it gets rotated. So sometimes something gets taken out, and you have no control over it. Um, and I think you lose that attachment to the media itself. I find people, for instance, they just go like, for instance, if you're on TikTok and that, you're just hyper scrolling. And I think it's the same with like Netflix and things. People just have no attachment to the content. So it's just like, it's just throwaway content. That's all it becomes. And I'm noticing that, like, literally, they're just generating an awful lot of fodder on the platforms. I don't want to be disrespectful to people that create and the movies that exist, but there's an awful lot of crap. And you're having to sort of search through it to find things you're actually interested in. Now, there's some great stuff on there. Of course there is. But me personally, I'm getting to the point where if they're going to remove the opportunity for physical media in the future, I'm just going to hold on to it for dear life, and I won't even watch anything new. I'll just give up on platforms that are streaming because I'm not balancing it all. It's like, you know what? I'm getting fed up now. I'm getting fed up searching for a minefield of crap. You're putting the prices up. We're going to be bound by this, and that's going to be the norm. But there's going to be some of us who, for instance, that have been acquiring physical media, and we'll have that for as long as we want to have that, you know? And I'm happy to draw a line in the sand to a certain degree. Like, for instance, let's say I don't know, let's say 2030. Let's say 2030, you can no longer buy any physical media anymore, apart from the used market. At that point, I'll probably just say, right, anything from 2030 back to the 1970s or whatever. There's a lot of content between that now and there. You know, there's a lot of music, there's a lot of movies, a lot of TV series, there's a lot of everything, and I'll just live in that period for the remainder of my life. I'm all right. That's plenty of content there. I'm happy, and I have control of it, and I won't have to pay a penny again. And fine, if that's the way they want to go with it, that's the way they want to go with it. So, what really brought this on is the fact that a video just come up on my that I was watching. It was more to do with gaming, but they spoke about one of the last remaining Blu-ray manufacturers like LG have stopped production of Blu-ray um, players going forward. And I thought, to be honest, it's getting quite hard to buy them anyway. So like now they've taken themselves off the market. I think it only leaves Panasonic and Sony. I mean, they sort of said something like that in the video where they were alluding to some other companies, but realistically, they're the only companies I see. I'm pretty sure Sony, the ones that invented Blu-ray in the first place, so stands to reason they'll be the last stand. But I think physical media is just dying, and I think we're going to a licensed model. And like, like I said, I find it quite scary. So put that into context. As you can see, I've got my books here. They're available in paperback, hardback. Well, most of them are available in hardback. They're also available in ebook, and most of them have an audiobook. But the reality is, let's say you was to buy. Look, I don't envisage there being a problem, but you can't guarantee anything, can you? So imagine for a moment that my books weren't available in paperback. All books were now digital. And you bought a book. Let's say you bought it on the Kindle. You're confident you bought it on the Kindle. I own this book. And then one day Amazon just decide, you know what, this is either, for whatever reason, let's not give it a reason. They don't even have to have a reason. They decide to shut down that function. They decide they're not going to go into digital books anymore. They're not interested in any of that. And they're going to give you 30 days notice. Because a lot of times in this terms and conditions, they'll have like a little waiver where they can just say how long and then that ceases regardless of how much money you've invested into it. There'll be somewhere in the terms and conditions that it's only a license in the first place. Like as an author, I don't have control of that language. It's like whatever the platform is. So, like for instance, I removed myself from being tied to Amazon exclusively. So anyone who's part of Kindle Unlimited, for instance, their books are exclusive to Amazon. So if you're going to buy a digital product, it's only Amazon. I don't really like that. I find it quite scary. So I did initially start like that because I was new. And then the more I started to delve into it myself a little bit, and I just thought that's a real big monopoly. And that's a lot of control over my product if they ever decided to change the terms. So I decided to make it available on a lot of other digital platforms. And that's what I decided. But the reality is if they decided to close that down and I had no paperbacks, then you would lose access to my books wouldn't exist for starters and there'd be no access to them. But I think it's really important that people have the opportunity to buy a physical copy and they can literally own it and do what they want. You know, you can buy a book and you can share it with your family. You can do whatever you want with it, can't you? And you can literally do that. But you can't do that if they take away a license, for instance. And that's kind of where if we go round to that, I have an iPod Classic, which I spoke about in another video, and I don't connect this to iTunes. I haven't connected it to the computer for a while. This has literally got me all the way up to the mid 2000s, I guess, maybe I mean, like 2010 sort of era. You know, I'm not sure the last time I connected it to a computer. But the worry for me is, like, what happens if I do log in? Does Apple provide an update to it when it's already functioning? It doesn't need an update. But does Apple then put an update on it that then changes the way licenses work and even locks it or something? You know, causes an issue, software glitch, and pretends it's a glitch. You know, I'm not playing with it. It's like it doesn't need to connect to the internet. It doesn't need to connect to an update. It's beautiful. But what happens if a situation like that existed with your Kindles, for instance, and then one day they just decided to lock all the Kindles for whatever, you know, but if you didn't update it, you wouldn't have the problem. There's all sorts of ramifications to this. I find it absolutely terrifying, in all honesty. I don't like it. So even before this situation, I've been gravitating towards acquiring physical content. And I think a lot of people probably think it's stupid and it's a lot of a waste of money. I don't see it like that at all. I see it as investing for the future. What you spend now, you won't have to spend later. And you'll always have access to it. And you won't have to keep spending in the future. So what will happen inevitably, because I'm seeing it already with VHS. So for instance, I'm even going as far back as VHS because I think things should be preserved. I think technology should be preserved. And I think there's going to be a curiosity in the future. Already people harp on about the 80s. We love the 80s. People love the music in the 80s. There's movies in the 80s. There's a lot of the movies in the 80s, for instance, that never got a chance to be on DVD and they're not on streaming services. So there's a lot of movies that have actually been lost to history already. Like I said, I find it all absolutely terrifying. So I'm I'm not trying, I am actively acquiring Blu-rays, for instance, because it's a premium format. But also I'm collecting VHS tapes as well. And they're becoming rare. So not only is the price more expensive than a Blu-ray in some cases, even a brand new Blu-ray, it's also hard to find. So for an example, if we just show it, and this is how I think it's really important because soon you're not going to have the option. You literally won't even want, even if you tried. And again, I find that scary for the next generation because you could think, oh, I'm being nostalgic. But you could have someone else who wants to be able to enjoy something from the past in a period of time when they didn't get to exist because they're curious and they're interested. And maybe they'll grow up and think, I wish I was born in the 80s. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, you should be able to have that experience, though. So, like, for instance, I miss having the video shops and things. And I would still prefer that over these Netflix things. I don't watch enough films, to be honest, to validate all this. You know, I find it exhausting having to try and fill it all up. I like to have my collection. I'll watch what I want when I want to watch it, but I don't feel pressured to. Whereas with a subscription service, you feel you have to get it quickly. Otherwise, you know, to get your money's worth for starters. But there's also a fear that that movie or TV show won't be there much longer. That's ridiculous. I'm not living like that. Anyway, so recently my Beetlejuice movie arrived. I've spoken about it a lot of times. This is actually in the UK, for instance. Last time when I bought it, there was only 5 available, so now there's only 4. I paid £15. The next one was £25, and it's only getting more and more expensive. So this is rare, and I say rare because it genuinely is, and it's only going to get worse. And that's going to happen more and more as people start to realize like the films that are literally going to be hard to find. Now, of course, that's available on DVD, Blu-ray. It's not going to go missing anytime soon in other formats, but in that format, it's dying. It's literally dying, and I don't like. I think it's a travesty. I really do. I think, like I said, I have fond memories of going to the video rental store. You know, it's more convenient than going to the cinema, for instance. It's in some aspects it's cheaper. You know, sometimes the cinema can be a good value, but I used to love that. You know, you can get it, and then you've got that. It's more of a place to go. There's not so many places to go that are of interest anymore. You know, it's just less to do. It's like, okay, I like movies, so then I'd like to make it an experience. That's the thing, isn't it? I'd like to go to the experience. I'd then like to go and have a look at the physical things. I like to look at the back of the case. It's a whole vibe. It's a whole vibe. And then it's like similar people in a similar vicinity. Now we're just locked away and we're just consuming and binging for no reason at all. It's absolutely shit. And like I said, there's no way to curate your lists, and they have the power to remove things. And then the more we get reliant on these services, what's happening? Price is increasing. So let's say, for instance, you're only really going to rent a couple of movies a month, maybe maybe on a Friday or something. You want to rent a film, maybe you'd rent a few films. So you don't watch much during the week because you just watch normal telly, or you're doing other things, gaming, or you're working, whatever the hell the reason is. But in the past, maybe it was enough just to watch a couple of films at the weekend, and that's what you like to do. Well, you don't always need a huge service for that. You can do, and if the services get actually mental in prices because they're assuming everybody's loving it, and we're just watching 100 films a month, and that's how they'll validate it. It leaves other people behind who don't consume that much content, and it turns out that the renting was actually cheaper, or actually buying, because I like buying. So right now, I've been acquiring a lot of used Blu-rays from places like Music Magpie. They're great. It's like a lot of them are £4 for £5, or £4 for £8, depending on what they consider more popular. Some are even buy one get one free, so it works out £1 a film. And that's the thing. So effectively, when you look at that model, a Blu-ray costs you £1 on one scheme, £1.25 overall on another one, and £2 on the other. That's not a lot of money, you know. And it's like anything. Once you've built a collection a little bit, you've now got options. When you start off, maybe got 5 films, it doesn't seem so good. It's like, what am I going to do with this? Then all of a sudden, it starts taking a mind of its own. You're collecting action films, you're collecting romance films, comedies, horrors, magical things, your superhero stuff. It's great. Then it extends to other formats. And for me, it's like a time capsule in history. So, for instance, like I said with the VHS, my priority is to get the classics, like things from the 80s. The focus is primarily the 80s, but some of my favorite films from the 90s, like The Rock. I love these. And I know they're available on Blu-ray and all that, but I want to remember the 90s, and I don't want to be forced to forget it. That's what it is. It's like whitewashing everything. It's like whitewashing the past. They're throwing us into the future with no choice. Um, and if they're going to start removing machines that can actually play these formats, that's a scary place to get to. I mean, fortunately, we do have game consoles that have disk drives and things. So I think we're plenty fortunate, really, that we have the options still. But I do feel it's all withering away, and I'm not happy at all. To that point, like, I'm regressing. Like, I'm literally going back and holding on for dear life. That's how I am now. So, like I said, for instance, I've recently bought a cassette deck, and I'm just buying cassettes now as well. I'm getting a little bit bored of CD. I like cassettes because I like to. It's a whole vibe. It's hard to explain it to people that aren't interested or don't really get it. Back when I was younger, although I had favourite songs, you can literally exhaust the shit out of them. If you keep playing your favourite song on repeat, it literally it loses its meaning and potency. It becomes less special, and then you're having to constantly try and find some of those great songs. You can make a playlist, but again, it gets exhausting. Sometimes there's songs that are on an album that most people are not heard of because they're not popular. Maybe it's a lot of the time the most popular songs are the ones that got released as singles. So on an album, there might be a song that's really good, and you just don't you're not aware of it unless you listen to the album specifically. So if I'm listening to an artist, for instance, I enjoy finding the album and listening to the album. If I'm making a playlist, yeah, I'll pick my favorite songs and I'll select and probably limit it to maybe 5 songs per artist because I don't want to just over convolute it. Because otherwise, I might as well just go and listen to the artist. Um, but yeah, like I say, I like to enjoy the entire album. So, like for instance, I'll just buy the album and play it through without keep skipping and stuff. And that's the good thing about cassette versus CD, for instance. I think cassettes last longer; they're more durable. They don't get scratched. So that's incredible, isn't it? But there's no option to skip. You can fast forward, but that's a whole process. By the time you fast forward, stop, and try to find where the song started and ended, you may as well just listen to it. Um, but they all have their greatness. I mean, like so, for instance, I've got a huge amount of CDs, and CDs are great because you can skip them, and the sound quality is great. But then I find in the sound quality on tape is equally as good. So I think that argument that the sound on CD is better, I'm not really noticing it now. I'm like this. That's I think that's maybe inaccurate. But every format has its benefits. These can get chewed up, for instance. If your tape deck, for instance, starts to gain a fault, it will it will ruin this, or at least ruin the section of it. But then you could argue if this gets scratched, it's inoperable altogether, and it will just refuse to play the entire track. So it swings and roundabouts, you know. But you could argue with the streaming. Let's say you go streaming only, your internet goes down, you've got a problem. And that happens. I've had that before. I'm trying to watch a film and it just buffers. My internet's really good and yet it's still buffering. And I'm like, I'm not watching this shit. I can't deal with that level of pausing. Yet if I put a physical media in, guess what? It plays beautifully. It doesn't have to connect to the internet. I just watch it. And I like going up to my collection and I can find, people think you can find things quicker on your streaming services. I actually find you can't. You can't because a lot of time I don't know exactly the film I'm looking for. Sometimes I have, and yeah, okay, I'll go up and search. But by the time I've gone up and started searching anyway and looking around for these things, I could have just got up off my arse, gone to my collection, and everybody organised in their own way. Some people do it alphabetical order. I don't like doing that because it would drive me mental. Because I don't. I like to have things in sections. So one shelf would be comedies, one shelf is romance comedies because I like to separate them to an extent. Um, then I've got my sort of action ones. Then I've got sort of like natural disaster ones, and then maybe they fit on the same shelf depending on how many there are. I've got my superheroes next to sort of like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, because they're more magic too. I've got like the war ones, like for instance, you've got like Braveheart, Gladiator, and The Patriot, and things like that. These really epic ones. And I love my collection. You can tell when I talk about it, I'm passionate about it, and I know exactly where they are. So let's, for instance, I'm thinking, oh, I'm not sure what to watch. I might watch Gladiator or Braveheart or something. I might have a think. And I might walk over there and I might see something next to it and I think, oh, The Patriot. I ain't seen that in ages with Mel Gibson. That'd be a good one to watch. Or I might see something else in the glint of my eye. But either way, it's like it's really going to be focused. Whereas on Netflix and things, I've got to look at a load of fodder in between. Maybe I'm trying to find a film and they're just showing me a load of shit. And it's like, oh, this is crap. I just want it curated. I want my favorite films and I want to watch them when I want to watch them, not when an app says it's available. You know, I'm finding that's really mental. For instance, I want to watch You've Got Mal. I recently bought it. I had to get it on DVD. I'm not sure if it's on Blu-ray, but I got like a good deal. Like Music Magpie, it was on that 4 for a 5. I think it was no, actually, I think it was the 4 for 8. Not sure. I think it worked out £2 actually. Good deal though. I've also got it coming on VHS because of a job lot bundle I got, but that's great. But I'm not sure. I don't think, for the life of me, I'm going to put it in my phone actually. This is the only way it is useful on your phone. You can type in a name of a film and it'll tell you where it's available. But I know it's available on my shelf, for instance. I don't have to go through this shit, do I? You've got. Oh, let's have a look. Watch film. So it's on TV, free of charge. If you go there, Amazon Prime, you've got to rent it. YouTube, you have to rent it. Google Play Movies, which is the same thing, rent it. Apple TV, you have to rent it. Sky Store, you have to rent it. It's not available on Netflix or any of their services. So if I want to watch this right now, I have to just use one of the TV services to stream it. I'm not sure how long that's available. Or you have to buy or rent it from one of the other services. But it's not on their subscription model. This costs £2. You know, I'm sorry. I just find it ridiculous that you have to literally go on the internet to see if something's available. That's this is just driving me to madness. In all honesty, we're losing sight of things because the thing is, in the past, what we had technology that was evolving, but it didn't destroy something. You know, for instance, you go from vinyl to tape, cassette tape, then you go from cassette tape to CD. It still exists. You know, we're going to go movies. You've got VHS, and then we've gone to DVD. Then we've gone Blu-ray. Now you've got Ultra HD. But there was always something tangible. Now we're getting to the point where it's almost like the technology's so far evolved now that it's trying to say we don't need this anymore. You don't need that anymore. We're gonna go digital. But that's where the companies thrive and the people get lost. You can't really share your content with people. I mean, you can if everyone's got a login and the companies allow it. But even you find it with Netflix and things now, password sharing isn't a thing. Yet if you've got a disc, for instance, like let's say I go and visit family and they want to watch You've Got Mail, I can lend this to them. You can borrow that. That's fine. Yeah, I'll just have it back next time. Oh, you want to listen? You want to listen to some music? Yeah, you can take that. You can listen to it. It's fine. You know, you can do that, but this is what the companies are trying to destroy. They're trying to force you to have content at their um, at their bidding. Really, it's really hard to get it through. I think to and articulate it properly without me getting emotional because I get really fed up. It bothers me that much. I'm trying to control myself, and I'm thinking this is just madness. How the world has got like this. Like how we are literally destroying the past, and I don't like that one bit. I don't like it at all because we're going to see this in the future. You're going to see it in films where someone's got a cassette. I mean, like a VHS tape, and it'll be like an old film, maybe if it's available, and you'll see them put it in, and there'll be literally a curiosity of the next generation. Oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? They just use that. It will seem absolutely alien to them. They won't understand any of it, and it's like that's a cassette tape. And how does that work? Like, to be honest, it blows my mind even though it's older technology. So it's hardly crap, is it? um, yeah, I refuse to go there. I refuse to allow that to happen for myself. So I'm clinging on for dear life. And if it means companies start getting greedy and they say the only way to access this now is for this service and that service, I'll just stop. I don't think, in all honesty, I don't want to be rude to content creators, you know, because there are some great movies that come out and there are some great music that comes out in the future as well. I would have to just draw a line though and say I'm not doing that. I'll just stick to the past. I'm more than happy just to continue rekindling. And I think what it is, I think for people before me saw this before I did. You know, I'm seeing it now, and there'll be people after me who see it too. You know, so we're all at different stages of awareness and interest. But the sad fact is, as time goes on, it's going to get harder to find these things, and that's why I can't stress more. Like more, it's not the price; it's how rare these things are. But the price naturally will go up as well. So you could argue that people in the past, for instance, they've prepared better, but it probably cost them more. Right now, Blu-rays are the cheapest they've ever been. It's incredible time to be collecting Blu-rays. If anyone's interested, the time is now. In my opinion, the time is absolutely now. Um, and I'm jumping on it like a bandit. And I'm also picking up the past. So now when there's an album on cassette or CD, I'm going to buy it on cassette because again, it's getting lost to history. One day you won't be able to find them. It'll be that rare because a lot of us threw them out. And only because we kept jumping onto the next trend of technology, little did we know that one day we would relish having that moment back. So I am a big supporter of physical media, and I think we should have the choice. I don't think companies should have this way to force us because, like I say, these companies have an invested interest in the avenue they push us. Sony are the proprietor of Blu-ray. I actually favoured HD DVD. So when DVD was getting upgraded, a new format for high definition, it was HD DVD versus Blu-ray. Blu-ray was invented by Sony, so Sony had the interest in that. I'm not sure if it's Panasonic or some of the other companies that actually wanted HD DVD. So you literally had half the major companies, the corporations, the big companies, I think like Fox and everything. They were going in different directions, and like Blu-ray won in the end. But Blu-ray was always going to win in the end when you think about it, because you had the Xbox 360, I think it was, had the HD DVD drive as an external drive, and I bought it. I owned that thing because I was like, I'm all in on this, hoping that we win. But Sony have their own PlayStation, so they won with the Blu-ray just because the amount of sales they managed to get for their the console. That's how Sony wins. Sony wins because they control the market. So literally, if they say we're going to put Blu-ray in our consoles, what do you think people with that console is going to use as a format? Blu-ray. And Microsoft don't make their own drives. They're reliant upon third parties to create these devices, and it wasn't even embedded in the console. You had to buy it externally. So anyone who bought an Xbox 360, for instance, was already using just a normal DVD drive. I don't think the 360, I'm pretty sure, didn't even have Blu-ray. It was the PS3 that had Blu-ray. I think the PS3 had Blu-ray. I'm sure it did because it got bigger discs. Um, yeah, so PS3 started it. Xbox 360 relied on a second drive, and Sony won. So let's say Sony decide now we're going to make a lot more money by selling digital content rather than physical media, and we can control it and remove the used market and all these things. Well, they can then say we don't need Blu. We're not going to produce Blu-ray anymore. I'm not sure if they have to license it out or not because I know they owned it. They invented it. So I just see it as Sony are the ones that will control whether or not that format dies out. But because manufacturers are no longer, a lot of the other manufacturers are no longer investing in it, it does beg the question: how long are the discs going to be produced? Because it's going to get really hard for people to buy an independent Blu-ray drive player. It will have to, a lot of people will be reliant on game consoles, and game consoles aren't always durable. That's the thing, isn't it? A game console breaks, we lose access. Now you've got to go and find another game console. And I don't know if anyone's figuring this out, but I've been looking. A lot of the game consoles that you would think are worthless now, they still hold a high value because people haven't necessarily jumped onto the latest game consoles because they're too expensive and they're not seeing the benefit of upgrading. So people are holding attachments to their old consoles, and people, the ones that want to go back, are still having to pay a premium, far more than you would expect. And people are gravitating to previous physical media as far as retro gaming as well. There's still people buying all the old game consoles and they're collecting. There was something I just sold today, and I was shocked. I was like, I'm going to list them because, to be honest, I'm going to start looking around the house for things that are just a waste for me. I don't see the value, but I'm thinking myself, I'm buying cassette tapes. I'm buying the VHS. So to someone else, that's worthless. They don't care. They don't want it. It's pointless to them. So I thought these little DS cartridges were a waste of money. I was like, no one's going to buy them. Then I went on eBay, looked at the individual price. They're about £5 average. Obviously, I have like 3 that were better than the 2 that were crap, but I just thought I'll list it for 15 quid. And I'll stick to my guns and we'll see what happens. And that same day, later that same day, it's sold. We'll go on to that video in a minute, but you go here, look. 14.99 I got for that. 15 quid just for these little cartridges, which I consider an absolute waste of money and no use to me at all. I'm not going to buy a DS because, like I've said so many times, there's a positive and a negative to a lot of things. Some things digital is good. You can streamline it, but it's on your own terms, you know. For instance, I've got a lot of emulators running on this. So I've got DS, I've got Nintendo Switch, I've got loads. It's crazy. It's crazy good. But again, that doesn't negate someone else's joy in having the old consoles. I consider doing that myself, but I think if you try and spread yourself too thin, it becomes impractical, unaffordable, and a complete mess. So for me personally, I'm focusing more on movies with an extension towards some music. That's where my focus really is. To an extent, I don't want to overclutter the house, but it's have your favourite content, you know. So we go on to the video a little bit here. I'm just sharing my personal opinion. And I'm getting really, really worried because even Taylor Swift, I think, at one point had her, before she had this really rise to fame, the big rise she had, I'm pretty sure at one point her music was taken down because of an issue with her. There's someone, I think it's a publisher or something. But then even within country music, Garth Brooks, he's only available on, I can't remember which one it is it Apple or Amazon? He's only available on one of the platforms. So if you want to listen to Garth Brooks' music digitally, you have to subscribe to the one he's on. There's one he trusts and he doesn't trust the others, so he won't put his music on there. And yet, if you've got the CD, you can just do it whenever you want. That's just one example, and there'd be more artists doing this. I mean, I know it's a bit extreme, but it's not out of the realms of possibility. If you look at TikTok, for instance, it wasn't that long ago. I think it was even this year when they had the licensing problem. I think it was with Universal Studios, which is a big sector of the music industry, and anybody that had their music on their video or their content, it was muted. So many videos were taken down, and it just made the app boring for people that use music for their content. And then eventually there was an agreement, and they settled it. But these disputes are going to happen. Of course, they are, and we've seen it already. Netflix was like a viable option for streaming, and then everybody started wanting a slice of the pie. All of a sudden, there's multiple subscriptions, and it becomes unaffordable. All of a sudden, you've got too many apps, you're in too many different directions. I don't know where the content is. I don't want to keep signing into this one, going over here for this one. I'm jumping all over the place. I just want one central location and be able to organize my content and know it's always available. So the point is, people are only going to have limited options in the future, and it's going to be either acquire the physical media, which is my personal preference, or people will pirate content because it's the only way they'll have permanent access to it. And the studios will have the companies involved will only have themselves to blame. Me personally, what I love, and I thought about it, like I've obviously got a VCR so I can play the video. But even if I couldn't play the video, I'm thinking for £15, even just as a shelf, even just on the shelf as a shelf piece, I think that's great piece of merchandise. So even if you never watch it, I've got a piece of the 80s with me, man. I've got like the original content when it was released. I think that's precious. I think that's beautiful. Someone watches the content, they don't have that experience, they just press play. And it's like, oh, that's just boring. That's boring. I want to see the cover. I want to look at it all. I love someone's made the effort to make all these things. Let's do that. And I've got all of the mediums. I love Blu-ray as well. I think Blu-ray's awesome. So it's not a case of the past is always just better, but I think we can be a bit nostalgic and appreciate it. And I'm not letting it die out. Not on my watch. So anyway, I'm really passionate about it, and I refuse to just stick to streaming only and things because I don't like it. So I've got a few playlists on the streaming platforms. But if I was choosing one to let go, I'd let the streaming platform go, and I would just stick with CDs if it come to it, because you can get blank CDs and make your own playlists anyway, make your own mixed CDs and tapes and stuff. I can do that too. It's fine. But yeah, I don't like it. I'm getting fed up. So we just listen to the other people talk a little bit here, see what they've got to say on the topic. Hopefully it won't go on too long, but yeah, I just thought I'd share my little thing. Like I said, for me this is rubbish. To someone else, it's great for Christmas or whatever they bought it for, And it's like, yeah, and I thought that. So like other people, maybe you're hoarding stuff you don't want. Let it go to somewhere that will, and then you can get something you want. But anytime you start collecting anything, it can seem overwhelming or a long journey. But it's part of the process anyway. Part of the process is finding the stuff you really want, not just like hoarding crap to have crap. You get to pick and choose the content you want to keep and restore. So, like I said, I have films and things that maybe one day people will struggle to find, and I'll have them available to watch whenever I want. So, but I think the reality is we should all have that personal choice. So, if someone's just digital only and they look like the streaming, there's nothing wrong with that. But you should have the choice either way, shouldn't you? I don't think companies should have the right to sort of say we're going to kill this technology now. It's like that's a scary place to be going, I think, personally. So this content, they may deviate to gaming because they're predominantly gaming. It's a gaming channel. Yeah, but they did touch on the movies. Now, the guy that talks a bit here, he's more into Ultra HD, which I've not gone up to, like Ultra HD Blu-ray. So the 4K ones, I'm not going there. I think they're too expensive, and I'm more than happy with Blu-ray standard. They're very high quality. In terms of comparable to streaming, it's really in between HD and 4K. It's in between. It's that good. And you're not paying a premium service. I'm literally getting these films cheap. But if you was to buy a 4K content, it costs a lot of money. Even if it's the disc, the 4K discs, or even 4K on the streaming platforms to own, the ones that allow you to buy them, they can be quite expensive. So I got used to Amazon Prime, for instance, doing the sale on the content, and they would make it $5.99. That's a good deal, because normally it's like $9.99 or $13.99. So you're thinking $5.99 is a value. Now I'm like, wait a minute, I can get these even cheaper on Blu-ray. I've been tricked to think that's a good deal. And I don't even have control of it, It's just annoying. You need internet connection all the time, And even if you do, and I had this problem. I was going on holiday and I was downloading the content to like a tablet, and you're thinking, right, I can watch this whenever I want because I've downloaded it. It's my film. It knows I've got the license. Amazon didn't let you do that. Amazon just kept giving you a certain period of time before you had to renew the license. And the way they were doing it was you had to delete the video and download it again. I was like, this is absolutely shit. It's like, I can't, this is not right. You haven't got the access you think you got. You don't have that ownership.
Which I think is probably the best way forward in the short term. Okay, let's move on. Final news topic of the week that we're going to discuss, and I guess it's games adjacent. but it's certainly something that's slightly concerning. LG has discontinued production of all of its Blu-ray players, and this follows in the wake of other people like Samsung, for example, also dropping support for the Blu-ray format. John, you read this.
Oh, crap. Oh, I just wanted to skip a little bit. Right, let just catch up a minute. Oh, it's done it again. Why do they keep moving the button?
One of the biggest surprises at the Game Awards last night came...
What is it
adjacent?
Doing? It moves it. Stupid app. I just want to make the point that Blu-ray is really the last line of defense. You know, I know we've got Ultra HD Blu-ray, but there's no way the Ultra HD medium is going to outlast Blu-ray itself. Because there's no way enough people have transitioned to that because the discs are too dear. Some of them are £25 a film. So there's no way you're going to be left with £25 a film option instead of the Blu-ray. So this is literally the last line of defense for physical content. You know, they've already been trying to kill out, I think CD to an extent. Vinyl's made a comeback, but for how long? You know, I think personally music might outlast movies in terms of physical content because artists they need that revenue. From my understanding, they don't get enough from the streaming services. Whereas movies get a lot from the release in the cinema, and then sometimes they see the rest as an afterthought. You know, they'll just continue to gain some money over the years. It continue to always make money. But I think musicians need the money because so much goes to the songwriters and things like that. So yeah, it's a crazy world we're living in, and I just think it's not necessarily what the consumers want. You know.
Something that's slightly concerning. LG has discontinued production of all of its Blu-ray players, and this follows in the wake of other people like Samsung, for example, also dropping support for the Blu-ray format. John, you read this news with some level of concern, and I guess it is games adjacent, bearing in mind that the only real way to preserve games on the console space fully and completely is via Blu-ray discs right now. And, you know, the fewer, the lower the demand for Blu-ray disc players in general, the fewer of them will be made, which may well have a bearing on whether there will be a physical disc option available on next generation consoles.
Yeah, it's just the general state of physical discs, Blu-ray discs. It's a bit concerning given this. So, first of all, no actual new players had been produced by LG since like 6 years ago or something. So they've been selling older models, and nobody's really taken the step to develop new ones. And now, along with Samsung and Oppo, they're also opting out now, and they're done making them. So that just leaves companies like Panasonic and Sony and a few others still out there releasing these, and they also haven't updated their lineup in a long time. But the thing about this is concerning because then this also incentivizes studios to not bother with Blu-ray releases, which I know streaming is quote unquote good enough in many cases. It does look fine by and large, but you still get better picture and certainly audio from a disc. And for movies that you really care about, it's nice to be able to have that option. I think it should remain an option, but it's becoming difficult. There's like when you go shopping at a store, especially in like America now, like you just barely can find these things anywhere. It's you're relying on online ordering. Even then they're often sold out. It's a little better over here in Europe, but still it's not as good as it should be. Furthermore, a lot of the cheaper UHD players just have issues. I've talked to so many people that they've actually struggled to get through certain movies. They just don't play right. And it's absolutely insane that this plagues players at all like this. I've not had that issue, but I also have an extremely expensive UHD Blu-ray player that does actually work very well, but one should not have to go to that level to get good playback.
What is the model?
It's the Panasonic UB9000. So, which is a really solid player. I'm really happy with it. I've been using it for years. The ones that I've heard, a lot of the Sony players have issues with like movies struggling to even finish, which is not good.
Wow.
That's not good at all.
what about the PS5? Because obviously that's
PS5
probably
actually does okay, and the Xbox Series X
Well, just
also
skip a little
pretty
bit.
okay.
disc version, as we've discussed at length in the past. But the point is, you have access to the content; it is there. If they're
Mostly.
actually withdrawing Blu-ray movies. Or rather, withdrawing the streaming versions of these movies, and there are certain movies that you can't access anymore. Absolutely, that's a problem. And if they're going to be withdrawing the option to physically own a copy of the content, that's a problem. And you're quite right. The inevitable consequence of it is going to be a return to piracy. It's that
Yep.
simple.
It's that
Yeah.
simple.
In terms of the implications for gaming, obviously, well, we've seen with the launch of the PlayStation 5 Professional that in a best case scenario, we're looking at an optical drive as an optional extra, a situation that's likely going to persist into the next generation based on that.
So it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, I'm not above myself. At the end of the day, it's if they're going to take away access, then you have to take action into your own hands, and you just have to start acquiring that content and back it up onto hard drives. I'm getting fed up. There's a TV show I really like, and it's not fair. It's Rules of Engagement. I think it's Rules of Engagement TV show. Over here, I've got it on disc. The first season, you can only and DVD is region locked. Obviously there's ways to get around that, but you shouldn't have to go those ways. And I'm not going all that far, but that's not my fault. So, for instance, you can only get that series 1 in the UK, and yet you can get the entire series in America on DVD. I have got the 70s show over here. I'll just grab it. Got the 70s show on DVD. I've got the entire series, and unfortunately, I've got the entire series on DVD because they don't produce it anymore. You can only buy it used. And guess what? It's not on any of the streaming platforms. So where are you? If anyone wants to watch this, soon you're going to be out of luck, and you're already limited. And I think it's an incredible TV show that I would actually be really, really, really angry if I couldn't access that. Because I think we all have like a top 10 or whatever of our favorite shows or comedies and things like this. And for me, that is a great option. I absolutely love it. And the fact that it's not available on streaming services, I find again, a lot of it is really alarming because it's already starting. And it doesn't end just because something's available now. That's nothing to say it will always be available. And there's an awful lot of fodder being replaced. It's being replaced with fodder. So yeah, anyway, it's something to. You can't change the course of history, So the way the future's going, we can't control. All we can do is cling to as much as we can, and take ownership. Take things in their own hands. So for me, yeah, I'm just going to learn to maintain my devices. So for instance, anyone sees my recent content, you see I've been learning myself how to maintain and repair a VCR. I even took it apart like earlier, and I've shared a video on that. And I managed to fix it myself by actually fixing a cassette tape. I had to take the tape apart. And these are things. If you want to get into that, you're going to have to learn, I think, to tinker yourself. Because what will happen is, as we're seeing, you're not going to be able to get reliable devices in the future. If they're stopping the manufacture of Blu-rays and they're starting that process now, it's inevitable it's going to end. It will cease at some point. So, like I said, the game consoles are not specifically reliable, so you can't guarantee that. Laser discs eventually die out anyway. There's problems, and there's issues with the mechanical equipment on a VCR, for instance, as well. So there'll always be a problem where you're going to have to learn how to replace something. It's almost like you see in the movies when you see the apocalypse and people having to get junk parts to try and make things work. That's literally what's going to happen because we've been forced into, I just think, a boring future, to be totally honest. It's a bit like when you look at I know it's movies and things, but if you look at sometimes these movies, they say the future, everything's streamlined, but it's so plain and boring. There's no character to anything. It's like, oh, this is nice. It's streamlined. There's literally nothing in your home. There's nothing outside. There's nowhere to go. It's like, oh, it looks really, really streamlined, but it's crap. It's like, no, I'd rather be back in the 80s and 90s, man. Anyway, so that's what I cling to, and I really love my collection. So I'm just going to continue investing in it because I absolutely love it. So yeah, if we get that up again, that's part of my collection. There's far more than that. You can only see the vinyl record player, but in my other videos, you'd see I've got the other devices too, my DVD, Blu-ray player, VCR, CD player, mini disc, cassette tape, What I'm thinking of doing is making sure I have 2 of everything, because I think that's really important. If one device goes down, you still have access. And I'm a contingency sort of person, you know. I think ahead, and I think that's just prudent. That's what I'm doing. I recently spoke about my I don't know if I've mentioned it in this video or not, but my iPod. I was going to sell it, but I realized I'll probably want that in the future because it's really, really practical. So where I say I can access my music and I think physical media is better, this I can actually access even faster because it literally, because I can spin and it's only the artists that I'm interested in for starters. There's an awful lot of music on it though. It spins fast. Depends how fast I roll my thumb around it. Depends on how fast the list moves. And then it's literally, I find them, click it, albums, specific albums, or just play, or boom, I'm listening to that artist. It's so fast, and I can come out and I can make playlists. So for me, the iPod is better than the streaming apps. The streaming apps are only good for content that just gets released, and maybe some indie artists that wouldn't have a platform otherwise. So, like I said, I think there's a room for everything, but I think it's absolutely disgraceful to start killing out specific viable options just to appease an industry that's really focused sort of solely on money and power and control. And that's literally what's happening. But anyway, if anyone else has a fear in a similar vein, it's like worth just starting to collect now because you're going to regret it one day. Do you know what I mean? So like even just something like Beetlejuice there, it doesn't mean it will never be available. It just means today there's only 4. Someone else may see it in their collection. They don't really care about VHS and they want to sell it. They don't really have any value to it. So you maybe get lucky in the future, you know? So it's not to say it'll never be available. But when stock is that low and you don't really know where else to look, I find that quite worrying. So, like for instance, Gladiator, if it broke at this present time, you can get it anywhere. I can just buy it, easy peasy. But if we follow trends, we can see one day it might not be as easy to get, and it'd be similar to VHS. Now there will always be options because it's available in VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, and digital. But still, if you have a favoured platform, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I've literally got it on Blu-ray and DVD, and I've got the VHS coming as well because it comes as part of a bundle with the other films I wanted. But I did want a VHS of it, so I will literally have every platform available because I've also got a digital version. So yeah, I don't think you could say one platform's terrible. I just think it's really important we conserve it, and that's where I'm heading. Because I think the world. I don't think the world's always improving, in all honesty, and I think we sometimes can blindly follow and think it's for the best, and it's just not. It's just not. You know, even things like Game Pass, for instance. If you're going to go Game Pass with the gaming content, it's a great deal for the price. But when you actually go through the list of games, it's the same games over and over for the most part. Some things change, but overall, it's the same things. And if you really want a modern game, it's like, oh, that's not available on there. Oh, right. So if I was only, let's say all the other options that didn't exist and Game Pass existed and maybe one other rival and it was reliant solely on that subscription model, there may be a lot of games that never get to be played. That's extreme at the moment, but if you just look at trends, there's nothing to say that ain't the future, you know? So we need to keep control of owning, I think, things before we stop having that option available to us. Yeah, it's quite serious.